This week we have the author of the UrbanKnights crime action series, James H. Roby. Not only do we get into his 7-book series, we also talk about the difference between an author and a writer, the nature of hate, and how to keep your peace. Stay tuned to learn more of what Damon does. DJ Prime, play the music. Welcome to Damon Does, your nerd space safe place. I am Damon, father of 2, husband of 1, and leader of this here Damodcast. My next guest has seen 3 icebergs come together, watched dolphins play in the Caribbean, and no matter what, Detroit is in him through and through. And now he's here to tell us all about his latest book, The Last Rodeo. Ladies and gentlemen, or wherever you are on the non-binary spectrum, give it up for James H. Roby.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I am outstanding. Couldn't be better. There were 2 of me.
Awesome. Thank you for taking time out to talk to a perfect stranger.
No, likewise. Thank you for having me.
You know what? Before we get into the 6 questions, I mentioned it on the intro. Let's talk about, I want to hear about The Last Rodeo.
Well, The Last Rodeo is the latest book in my thriller series, The UrbanKnights. And that's all I write. The UrbanKnights are a group of private detectives led by Jordan Noble. Jordan Noble is a former agent of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Comes home and opens up the UrbanKnights. It's a detective agency in the city of Detroit. After a series of ventures, Jordan Noble is in a crossroad. There's some personal stakes here, and this is the first time I've done this. This is one of those, I feel like every, especially thriller author, has to do this, where there's a half of the book is in the past and half of the book is in present day. So the half that's in the past goes over his first rodeo. There's a saying, I'm not sure your listeners are familiar with it, but when somebody challenges you or say you've done something, you're like, hey, this is not my first rodeo. Well, this is Jordan Noble's first rodeo. It tells his adventure of how he's trained and eventually becomes an operative for the Defense Intelligence Agency. Meanwhile, he's in the present day telling his father about this first rodeo of his and dealing with some fallout from the previous novels.
This is quite an extensive series. Are you up to what book is this? 8?
This would be 7.
This is book 7.
So,
Okay.
there's 6 books in the series. That I wrote a prequel, which I am using as a giveaway. You can get on my website, and I wrote another book with 4 other African American authors who are in the thriller space, and we call it The Collective. So technically, this would be like, I don't know, 7.5.
I'm going to have to check it out. The website is in the show notes, by the way. Follow them on Instagram, follow them on Threads. We got the website all in the show notes, because most people are not sitting down writing these things down anyway. So when you get a chance, go to the show notes and click on the appropriate link, follow this man, and buy his books.
Yes, please, Lord. Baby need new shoes.
James, are you ready to answer the 6 questions?
I think I am. I'm prepared.
Question number 1. When did you know you wanted to get into writing?
Now, see, I've been debating this about how honest I want to be about this. It was an autobiography. It'd be called 2 movies and an anime. So many years ago, I saw Superman, the movie. And I remember coming out the movie theater with my parents just being like overwhelmed. I was like 7, 8 years old. And I was just like, this is awesome. What if I were Superman? And in my mind, I started doing this thing where I rewrote the story, and instead of, Smallville, he landed in Detroit and I was Superman, all this kind of stuff. And that started me on this idea of, making my own stories, mostly in my head. But in high school, and I'm going to date myself even more, there was a TV show called Robotech, and they had taken three animes, put them together, and it ended rather abruptly. And there's various reasons why it did, and I was unsatisfied with that ending. So I wrote a third movie or whatever. And so I wrote this book. I remember I had an actual typewriter, and it was, I went through the ribbon, so I started writing it by hand. I mean, I really wanted to I never finished that book. Kind of put that to the side. So many years later, while I'm serving at Minot Air Force Base, I went to see Passenger 57, and I remember feeling at that time, it was like, man, it's not, every once in a while you get an African American action hero. And Wesley Snipes was really hot in that point. And this was like his first action movie. And I remember thinking, man, I could do this. So I started writing the book. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Your main character in the Urban Knights series, is he the only character that you've published, or have you published others?
Jordan Noble, that's all I write. There's been opportunities and suggestions to do otherwise, but I just really feel like this is the story I want to tell. With absolutely no shame, admit that Jordan Noble is a cooler version of me. Our careers and our life are very similar up to a point. We both come from Detroit. We both went in the Air Force, except where I was stuck at Minot Air Force Base for 4 years, 3 months, 27 days, 17 hours. Jordan Noble has an adventure. He goes off and becomes an agent with the DIA, and eventually becomes a private detective. So yeah, he's my guy. Him and I are ride or dies in the literary sense.
Question number two. What do you wish you had known when you had started out?
I mean, this one was kind of hard because there's so much stuff you just don't know. You're just not writing a book. I mean, there was like one thing I could go back in time and speak to young James and be like, get an agent. It's really the most important thing as far as being a author is to get the book into people's hands. So I feel like, there's writers and there's authors. Writers, everyone's a writer. Anyone who's written anything is an author, but a writer, but an author gets paid. So, and to get paid, you have to, you know, get the book into people's hands, get people to look at it. And that has been my greatest challenge. I really feel like the people who have encountered my works, for the most part, enjoy it. I have gone through a lot of, revisions and editings and growing over the years. But the thing that really is just like Achilles heel is just the marketing piece. So yeah, that would be like, that and, buy stock in Apple would be the two, you know, words of wisdom I would give to younger James. Yeah,
The easy part is the making of the thing, and then selling it is the hard part. So, how have you overcome
yeah,
that?
it's an ongoing struggle. I mean, I'm doing this now. Some of the things I mentioned earlier was, writing a collaboration with other guys, to help get your name out there. Being on social media, it's a challenge. I've hired experts, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's it's not like a magical thing, but there is something to this marketing thing that I'm just not grasping. And once I get it, I kind of feel like I'll do better. But yeah, this is a ongoing struggle that I have. I'm still battling that demon.
Question number three. What's your go to order at your favorite hometown restaurant?
Okay, this one was tough too because it was like, man, where do I go often? So just for clarification, this is like when I sit down at the restaurant, what do I always get kind of thing?
Honestly, it's however you want to answer because I've had
Okay,
it
all right.
interpreted a bunch of different ways.
So my go-to since I was a kid is I go to Kirby's. Kirby's is a chain here in Detroit area of Coney Islands, and Coney Islands is a particular type of chili dog that Detroit is particularly known for. And what I get every time is two conies with squeezed cheese, no onions, French fries, and a root beer. And that's pretty much the only time I drink root beer. But it's just those tastes go together. Kirby's the place. There's a few other places here in Detroit that people swear by. Yeah, that's my joint.
That sounds delicious.
It's heaven on a plate.
We don't have Kirby's here. I'm in southern Indiana, like right across the river from Kentucky, and
Right.
I don't think we have Kirby's here. So I guess is that a regional thing or is that national
No,
and I
that's
just missed it?
definitely it's definitely a Detroit thing. They have like maybe 7 or 8 locations here in the Detroit area, but there's National, there's Leo, there's a few chains, there's a lot of independents. Like I said, this Coney dog thing is very much a local variant of the chili dog. This is kind of like where you would go to find it. I don't think Kirby is in the maybe throughout Michigan. I've seen a few up north, but I don't know if it crosses any state lines or anything.
Question number 4. What are you curious about?
Now, I honestly have been thinking about this all day, and I don't want to sound all philosophical and anything, or full of myself, but in my recent efforts to be more involved online, I've been wondering about the nature of hate. And I say that because it seems like that is a button that people go to quite frequently. And I can't really blame them because, it generates looks, it generates likes, and I guess that's what this whole thing is about. I understand what hate is about, but I don't understand why people hate things that are not impacting them. I don't understand why left hates right. I don't understand why Jews hate Gentiles and all the various ways you can express that, because it's really a thing of, well, how does this even bother me? I often wonder when I read some of these just hateful posts. I'm like, do you even know these people, or is this just something that you see on TV? So I get that there's something that you hate. Like I could get just go a laundry list of things I hate, and but I don't know, one, what that does for you. I mean, if you're using this for content, and I'm not advocating this, but I can understand a person's kind of like, this is where they are, and this is how they get their money. But just for a normal person to just be so hateful, it's and I see it's having strains on our country. And yeah, I don't know where this is going and what the upside of this is.
How do you keep your peace amongst all of this, especially in the kind of climate that we're in right now? Like, how do you keep your peace?
But one thing is, you turn this thing off. I have really been an advocate of get off the internet. And I don't want to be like that touch grass guy. And I feel like, being of a certain age, having grown up with the internet, so I remember a time when, you social media was talking to people. I'm not as dependent upon it. And I feel like it's a tool. Social media, any kind of web browsing or searching or any kind of thing you can get off of the internet. I feel like it's the beginning and not the end. And I feel like a lot of people, it's like the end for them. You hear about people, you know, having friendships and, romantic relationships solely on the internet. And it's like, you got to get away from it. Social media skews reality so much that you need to, I guess I gotta say it, touch grass. My daughter brings me great joy. My spending time with my friends. I mean, even writing. I just unplug because I just feel like there are times when I hear it so much, and so I when I step away from it, I have a better clarity as to why people do the things they do and respond the way they do. I just think it's almost like an echo chamber. So yeah, you got to step out of it, go into the real world. It's a great place out there. You got to try it.
I think this comes up pretty often is, or at least it pops up in my head every time, almost every time I have an interview, is we don't have third spaces anymore. And I think
Oh
that's a
yeah.
big thing that would help. And I think the internet became people's third place versus being able to go to the park or the coffee shop or whatever.
I have a close friend. She was one of the people that helped me with editing, and she was the head of a book club over in Chicago when I lived there. And she was a librarian, and she was like, "That's a third space, and that's a place where people can go." But I think there is a convenience of social media. I remember in the early days, like in the 2000s, there was this thing of you were always accepted. You could always find a tribe, for lack of word. And I think that tribalism has become, tribe versus tribe instead of like a universal tribe. I mean, I don't know what it takes to defeat this or to go back to that third space. I don't know if I think there are some third spaces, but it cannot compete with the convenience and the universal access of social media. Whatever your drug of choice is, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you always have it with you, and it's hard to not just pull it out. I mean, you see a lot more where people are either waiting in line or even if they're. I found myself doing it's like it's so convenient, and it's almost like whatever you think of. I mean, when I think of questions about, particularly about movies, I just, I go to the internet, and the thought of using any other kind of methodology, doesn't even really come into effect. So yeah, I don't know if it's so much a matter of third spaces aren't available. It's just that they are just outgunned by the advantages of social media being convenience and always there, 24 hours a day.
Question number 5. What should I ask you that I didn't know enough to ask?
I don't really know. I would like to have conversations about the characters in and of themselves in my book and where they came from, the kind of like why this path and not others. I see, especially in the African American space, a lot of emphasis on what they call I don't know if this is a crass term or the street lit, where there's a lot of emphasis on if it's urban fiction, it's my baby daddy part three and things like that. And my desire was always to not to tell a black story, but to tell my story. I always felt like I'm not a black author. I'm an author who happens to be black. I don't know. I think there's a lot of being former military, being from Detroit. I've kind of hopefully created a unique experience that people can enjoy, and something they can't get anywhere else.
Do you consider your what do you consider your genre? That's probably the best way to put it. It's like action is like action mystery, action thriller. Is it more of a pulpy feel?
If I had to put a name, it would be crime thriller. The hard thing about this is that when I first started writing it, it was like, for convenience sakes, I would say, oh, it's the Black James Bond. And it's because when you're telling somebody about it and you say something like that, they go, "Oh, okay." They expect, gunplay and hand to hand combat and evil villains and that kind of thing. And it's not quite as pulpy as that, or as people with double entendres for names, and but there it is that kind of like he's an adventurer. Jordan Noble is a crime fighter in the fact that he's a private detective and he is in Detroit, so that's a lot of it. But some of the stories, his espionage background has filtered in. I guess it would be a spy crime thriller, but for marketing purposes and for convenience, I call it a crime thriller because people can say, "Okay, I know what you're talking about." You want to be unique and the same at the same time. You want people to be able to, okay, I know what this is, and then read the story and be like, "Oh, that was different. I expected." I think that was the best compliment I got once. I went to a fairly reputable spy slash the kind of stuff that Tom Clancy and Lee Childs and those, that was their space, and they reviewed my book, and I think initially once they found out I was black, they were not sure what to expect, and in the review they even said I was pleasantly surprised. And I didn't take that as a backhanded compliment. It may have been, but there was definitely this thing of they didn't know what to expect, and I don't have a problem with that because as a writer, you want people to be kind of not necessarily caught off guard, but surprised, pleasantly so. So yeah, and then in my long-winded way, it's a crime thrillers.
Question number 6. If you could create a new holiday, what would it commemorate?
Okay, so this one I spent a lot of time thinking about. So first, I know you're gonna pitch it back to me, but this is a new holiday, right?
Correct.
Okay, so when you play bingo, you get that free space in the middle.
Yes.
The name of the holiday is Free Space Day. So this is the rules. So when you start Free Space Day, you're given a form. It's going to be a universal form among all government agencies and all private agencies. You fill out this form, and you have to, in this form, explain the holiday in as much detail as possible. You got to give some basic information and then give it some flourish or whatever. So if your holiday is Sausage Day, you got to say what is Sausage Day? When did it start? What day is it? How do you celebrate and all that? Now, no one's going to check and see if you do these things. But for Free Space Day, you pick your own holiday, you pick what day it is, you pick the history about it, and then you have to adhere to that. So if your holiday is on April 15th of every year, you get that off for the remainder of your working career.
Yes, that is awesome.
It can be anything, but you have to explain it. You just can't say it's Sneaker Day. You got to give the history of Sneaker Day, and then after that, you're good. So every April 15th or whatever, you get Sneaker Day off.
That is fantastic. Oh man, that's awesome. I know what my holiday would be. What would you create then? I say
Oh
you're doing
man,
free space. You're doing free space day. I'll tell you. A long time listeners know what mine's gonna be, but you tell me yours and I'll tell you mine.
well, you know what? Actually, my holiday would be, I'm not sure how to call it, but it would be Hip Hop Sneaker Day. And you would have to talk about the intersection of hip hop and sneakers. And what's interesting about that, I met the man, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he created the first historically black university here in Detroit. And he was one of the guys who designed the first Air Jordan. And from there, he went out and he said, you know what, hip hop and black culture has influenced the sneaker culture so much. I'm going to dedicate a school to just kids making their own sneakers. The year before last, he had his first open house, and he had Jazzy Jeff was there, and there was people from the NBA telling their story of how hip hop and black culture influence their various organizations. But anyway, to my point is that would maybe Hip Sneaker Day. That sounds cool. And the history of hip sneaker is that the impact, the crossroads between African American culture and the sneaker industry, and it would be on September 5th. That's the day after my birthday. So I always would have like a 2-day holiday kind of thing. And how you celebrate it is that, you got to obviously wear your favorite sneaker that day and just be able to explain your story, your connection to those particular sneakers.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. I
All
like
right,
that a
your
lot.
turn.
This has been a long time thing for me. The day would be Demond Day. It would be on
Okay.
the August 10th of every year, which is my birthday.
For birthday.
And the thing that I would want, this is how you celebrate Demond Day, and I still actually ask people to do this every year, is go do something nice for somebody else that they can't repay you for. And bonus points if you don't know them.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Just
Like a
one.
just pay it forward.
Yep. Just share some love, man. Just share some love.
Man, you all humanitarian and everything. I want to change my answer.
but also, you have to tell everybody. You also have to greet everyone Happy Demon Day.
Okay. That seems fair.
I figured it's quite ridiculous, so I love it.
Well, you know what? That would be, a national day of paying it forward. We could definitely use something like that.
Just a time to think about somebody else, even if it's just for a minute. And it never fails to fill my spirit when I'm thinking of how, even if I can't do something sometimes, even I'm thinking how I can help somebody better their lives or whatever, even if it's just something small like hold the door open.
Yeah.
There's not enough of that. So why create?
Why create?
Hmm.
Well, you know what? There are two things that I believe. I believe this is that the world needs your book, and don't let someone else tell your story, whatever that story is. So that's, those two together goes to why create, because I believe every single person, whether it's a book, a song, a poem, whatever, has something inside of them to creatively share with the rest of the world that no one else can give. I feel like we're living in a time and society, a world where, we need more positivity. I think about movies, and I think about, and I know you've experienced this where you've gone to the movie and be like, what was that I just spent 10, 15, $20 on? And then you'll go to another movie that's just, I think about like The Matrix, how unique and different that was, and how, that could have not been made, because it was so different. And I just think we need more movies and more poems and more festivals and more whatever. I think that, I think we are as a nature, a social creature, that we need each other in one way, form, or another. And that, when we get together, we should share something. I mean, the moment you see a friend, if it's been 5 minutes or 5 years, you tell a story. Hey man, let me tell you what happened yesterday. And I just think that that's an important part of the human experience. And I really believe that you have a story inside of you that no one else does. Even if your friend was there with you, you have a different point of view. I have a friend, and we've been friends since high school. And I swear, it's like, were you there? I mean, every story we have, he's got like a completely different take on, just because it's from his perspective. And we tell the story, or remember that time we did this? It's like, oh man, it didn't go like that. That even that is interchange is important to the human condition. I just don't think we have enough of that, for whatever, for financial reasons, for creative reasons, for shyness, for whatever. I just think that would make the world so much better. If you're too busy listening to crazy, interesting, funny, exciting stories, you ain't got time to be hating on each other.
So thank you very much, James. I've had a blast. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate, any chance to get the word out. And, I think you said it yourself, talk to a complete stranger. I feel like in this space we call the internet, whatever format it is, we need some more just, just some friendliness. I feel like we're missing that.
Thank you once again for joining us, whether it's your first time or this time for the 6 questions. If you like the show, tell the world. Please jump on your podcast app and leave a 5-star review and tell your friends. That's the best way to grow the show, and more can join the conversation. And until next time, see it, hear it, speak it,